All right, wargaming enthusiasts, the tactica question that we're going to look at, we're going to analyze today. What is power creep in a wargaming system? What is the definition? How should we be aware of it? And is this really a problem? Is this really an issue based on the perspective? Now, when we throw out the term wargame, we've got a massive scope. In my mind, on one end, and I'm just going to explore 3 or 4 of the systems that I enjoy playing as examples and systems that I have experience in. All the way on one side, we have a system like Chain of Command, Historicals, World War II. The rule set is there to recreate a narrative. It's there to recreate, look at battles, historical battles, answer the questions, what if, and see if there is the possibility of different outcomes. They're not limited to any one miniature. You can use a variety of miniatures and a variety of models. The rules are independent of it. So you can kind of use a lot of different scales and pull in from a lot of different manufacturers. On the exact opposite side, we have an example, Warhammer 40,000. This is a miniature system by Games Workshop where Games Workshop is looking to literally sell the miniatures. The rules are really just an excuse to play with your miniatures on the table. They're there to give you a framework. The rules drive the sales of the miniatures. And of course, there's a variety of factions, a variety of miniatures, and a lot of different ways you can explore the game. And then we kind of have something in the middle where BattleTech, we have the miniatures, we have the rules, but for the most part, and this is not a criticism, the BattleTech universe has been mostly static for numerous years. There's a lot of different timelines to play. There's a lot of different eras to explore. Clans and Invasion, Jihad, Dark Age, exploring Inner Sphere, Star League, but we're kind of locked in and you kind of get to play where you want to play. The idea behind power creep is that as units get released, as new stuff gets released for a system, the company wants to give you incentives to go and buy it. If you have your army and you like your army and it's all good, you're not injecting that monthly cash flow into the system. But if they release a new unit and now they take that unit and they make that unit very, very powerful, who doesn't want to win? Even if you're not a fully competitive player, you're going to go and say, hey, I need to check out these models. So you're going to go and purchase those models and add them to your collection, add them to your army. Another definition of power creep is where historically, if again, we're looking at Chain of Command, I love to play late war Germans because I love tanks. BattleTech, if you've been following this stuff, I love tanks. Warhammer 40,000, I love tanks. Historically, the tanks in World War II, whatever rule set you're looking at, they perform a certain way. The stats are kind of locked based on the time period and based on the tech. And there might be a couple of little different interpretations based on the rules, but a tiger is a tiger. When you look at something like Warhammer 40,000, they take the classic, I love Land Raiders. They periodically will take a unit that already exists, that has been out there for a while, that they look at the sales and they say, hey, the sales are a little flat. A lot of players have Land Raiders. Fritz doesn't need any more Land Raiders. I only have 8 Land Raiders, so I've got that under control. But in exploring that, what they will do, power creep, is they will re-release rules that say update the Land Raider and now, based on a special rule, make it really hotness and make it so that people want to go out and say, well, I have to buy a Land Raider. I got to start playing Land Raiders. And we've seen this in various editions. So that's the first definition of power creep, where a company will rewrite or re-release rules and models, forcing you to go out and buy those models, forcing you. Now, this is a double-edged sword because let's say, and I have a couple of 40K armies like this where I say, hey, these are the models I like to play. I don't want to play these power creep models. Just the visuals don't do it for me because I consider myself kind of half competitive, half narrative player. So when you're confronted with these models that are just going to destroy you, not because of any tactics or how great your opponent is, but just because the rules are totally bonkers for them, the power creep spreads where now I'm like, well, I got to get more models of my own, or I have to double down on more of what I have to get more on the table. That's the first definition of power creep. Now, the second definition of power creep. In a wargaming system, not so much historicals, but a little bit, there's this idea of balance. We have a point system, we have a squadron level, we have a battle value, we have gold coins, crowns, weird stone, whatever the currency is going to be in the narrative. But the idea is you play at a certain point level, I play at a certain point level, we buy our units and we fight it out on the table. So in theory, what this means is we can have two vastly different armies, but they should be somewhat equal on the table. Battletech, we're playing at 4,000 battle value. You can go all mechs. I can just decide, heck, I'm going to go all tanks. In theory, it's never an exact science, but it's equal. Now, historical war games, since they rely on recreating a narrative, there are point systems, there are battle values if you want to play kind of head-to-head, but often they're a little bit unfair or they're a little bit unbalanced depending on the scenario, attacker versus defender, or you're literally recreating something. So putting that aside for a second, what you see in these hobby wargaming systems like Warhammer 40,000, the company wants to get you to buy more models. So what they'll do is, if you have a tank, or let's say a group of Terminators, kind of elite soldiers in a particular army, Grey Knights, and you're paying 13 power points to get them on the table, Games Workshop says, well, if an average size game is this, and in that Fritz is getting 5 Terminators, let's reduce them to 10 points. Let's reduce them to 8 points. So now it's literally like inflation. So now if we're playing at a certain power level and you have reduced the points of multiple units, I'm going to have to get more on the table. I can get more on the table. And this has been a major challenge for Warhammer 40,000 over the years. If you have a chance to go to a site like PDF Drive or Scribd or just kind of Google Images, and you can find the greatest example, if you find the third edition Warhammer 40K rulebook, this is the one with kind of the Black Templars on the cover, and there's an example of kind of a 1,500 point, now it's an older point system, 1,500 point Space Marine army, and it looks fantastic. I mean, the models, of course, now look a little bit dated because we're talking about the early 90s, so it's not a fair comparison visually. But if we look at the army, and now that's a standard 40K army. That's a tournament army. That's what you would show up to play for an average game of 40K. It's got like 2 tanks, a dread, a command, and just an elite couple of troops. It looks like a skirmish force. You look at 40K now, they're massively sized armies. And the only way to get that on the table is to be constantly reducing the points. So this is another example of power creep. Now that we have the definition, is it good or is it bad for a game? On the one hand, it's good, and I'm hesitant to say that. Maybe 10% it's good because it's going to innovate and give you new models to play. This idea where a company says, hey, let's create a new unit, a new model. Let's give it some cool rules. Let's get it on the table, and let's have our players explore it. I mean, we always want new models, new warbands, new units, new spacecraft, whatever the system's going to be. We want more to add to our collection. So having something expand is fun, especially as you play through the years to add to your collection and face new things. But I feel like that's only like 10%. The fact when you release new units deliberately with rules that are not balanced, not fair, and basically invalidate and discount the rest of other armies that people are playing in the name of power creep to have people go out and buy those models, that creates a lot of disharmony in the community. That creates a lot of frustration as a player because I just got my army together. Now I'm getting smashed. I got to go out and buy more stuff. But ultimately, power creep affects you, in my opinion. Then I'm going to turn it over to you guys in the comments. Affects you based on the system that you are playing. Battletech doesn't really have power creep. Looking at Chain of Command, no power creep. Definitely no power creep. DBA, DBN, no. looking at a system that has been a new system, looking at God tier where it's been built up to be competitive and to be balanced and give you options for the sake of fun over profit. Right now, no power creep. But when I look at 40K, when I look at Games Workshop, their entire model, their entire DNA, their entire tactica, which, hey, is fair because they're there to sell you models, is entirely 100% based on power creep. And it's something that as a player, myself playing a long time, you either have to accept it and shrug and realize against certain models and against certain army builds, unless you're mirroring the same build or you're just spamming similar units, you're probably never going to win that game. No matter how much of a tactical genius you are, just you can't beat the rules. That's how Games Workshop has set things up. Your thoughts, your comments, power creep, something big in the wargaming community, or is it really very much system independent?